Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 112. And the title of this episode is High Probability of the First Part of the Collapse in the Fall. And I will discuss why I believe that this is going to happen and what's going to happen. And we see the markets have finished on a positive note. Gold and silver have been pushed down a little bit. And let's get into the economic collapse news. In Cyprus, let's go back to Cyprus. What the central bankers and what they always want is hard assets. And the goal of basically bringing down a country is to get those hard assets, natural resources, gold, silver, and oil, natural gas, things like that, copper, lithium, because they are printing money, and this money is paper. It's really worth nothing. They know it. They want all the things that are worth something. So when something collapses and the paper value plummets to nothing, they have real hard assets. The people are left with paper. So in Cyprus right now, they really want the gold that Cyprus has, plus all their deposits of any type of natural resources. And right now, Cyprus is resisting pressure from the European Commission and the IMF to sell its gold reserves for the bailout. And they're looking at alternatives, and Cyprus is trying to come up with different ways to hold this off and not sell their gold. And Cyprus has around 13.9 tons of gold, which is 447,000 troy ounces, and they want this. And right now, Cyprus is resisting. And this is what all these bail-ins, bailouts, the theft of the people's wealth, this is what it's all about. It's all about getting the hard assets from the countries, from the people, because when they know the economic collapse is coming and they know the paper is going to zero, this is what they need to have. And people don't really understand this anymore. And yesterday when I said, people in other countries, in other areas, they know that gold, silver, platinum, copper, oil, natural gas, lithium, all these different real estate, land, all these things are worth something in the end. The only thing that won't be worth something is the paper or the electronic money that you think you have in the bank. Now, in the news today, Bernanke came out and he told everyone what he was going to do, and which was nothing really. It's more of the Fed babble that he always spews out of his mouth. And what I found interesting, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, and I see now that the mainstream media is starting to pick up of what's really happening, and they're starting to report on this. It's funny because when I look back in 2008, I saw the same thing starting to happen, where the mainstream media started to talk about the housing is in a bubble. It was always really at the last moment when they started to talk about this, because the housing market was reaching its height. Then they started talking about the stock market, and you saw a couple of articles come out about this, and we're starting to see this now again. And this goes on to say a jobless recovery is a phony recovery. And let me just read a little bit of this to you. In recent months, Americans have heard reports out of Washington and in the media that the economy is looking up, that recovery from the Great Recession is gathering steam. If only it were true. The longest and worst recession since the end of World War II has been marked by the weakest recovery from any U.S. recession in that same period. The 7.6% unemployment figure is so common in headlines these days, is utterly misleading. An estimated 22 million Americans are unemployed or underemployed. They are virtually invisible and mostly excluded from unemployment calculations that garner headlines. I find this absolutely fascinating because myself and many others, Peter Schiff, Fabian for Liberty, Greg Hunter, Greg Manarino, uh, all Jim Farber, um, Mark Farber, sorry about that, Jim Rogers, all of these people have been saying this, and all the other alternative media outlets or other type of channels that are not controlled by the mainstream media have been saying this for how long now? And now all of a sudden the mainstream media is coming out with it. Just like they came out with the NSA spying. They're always behind and always years late on what the news really is. But it goes on to say, even the federal government payroll is turning to part-timers. In June 2012, 58,000 federal workers were part-timers. This year, it's 148,000, and we still don't know how the budget sequester will play out, for many agencies have resorted to furloughs rather than layoffs. And they are right. It's a complete illusion. It's a manipulation of the calculation. It's a manipulation of all statistical numbers. And really, again, if people don't have jobs, what does that really mean when we think about when people don't work? Well, retail stores and retail sales don't do very well. Retail does not expand, it contracts, and we've seen that all these retail stores that a couple episodes back, they all added up to a thousand plus, couple thousand plus stores that are closing for the main retail chains. So we see that happening. What else happens? We don't see main corporations or businesses expanding. We don't see small businesses expanding. We don't see any of this happening. When people don't have jobs, they have less disposable income, and this is why we don't see the purchasing of big ticket items. We don't see retail sales going up. We don't see anything like this happening. We see the actual opposite of all this happening. And this is how we put all this together and we say, well, how great can the job market be if everything is contracting? It makes no sense. Now, it makes sense to us because, we're paying attention. It wouldn't make sense for the Fed unless they changed the calculation and manipulated numbers. That's really what happens. But again, they don't want you looking at that. All eyes on the stock market. Okay. Now, speaking of the housing recovery, the housing starts miss most since January 2007. Permits have biggest miss in history. And we're starting to see this a lot. The housing momentum is starting to slow. And a couple episodes back, we talked about how the mortgage applications were down, and the mortgage applications are down even more. They are 45% down. Mortgage applications are back to the 2011 lows. And as the mortgage applications, people are not applying for mortgages, they're not doing anything, and it always lags behind the sales. And eventually what we'll see is the sales start to decline. These hedge funds and other investors that were buying up the homes, they are trying to get out of them right now. They don't want them. And since the job market is an illusion, Americans right now do not have the resources to purchase these type of huge ticket items because, again, we have to use common sense here. If the housing market is so great and it's recovering, Why is the Fed still purchasing all of this toxic real estate every single month for $40 to $45 billion? It makes no sense. If the real estate market is going up, why do they have to do that? The banks, should wait until the housing market, as they're saying, is been moving up. They should sell their homes, but they don't want to because it's easier for the Fed just to come in and purchase it. The Fed knows that this is completely fake. They tried to get people into the market. It didn't work, and it's not working. Now, there was an article that said, critical warning, suckers bull market of 1928 now repeating. Dow is set to crash 65%. And this goes on to say that the fall could be down to 5,000 points. And we saw this in many places. We saw this in the Great Depression during that period. And this goes on to say, compared to the current stock market, to the suckers rally of 1928 that set up and led the lambs to the 1929 slaughter. So history buffs, be warned that Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke, risky cheap money bubble blowing, depression fighting remedies are repeating the 1928 bull market suckers rally, whose side effects could include another depression. Actually, it will include another depression. We saw this in the Great Depression. We saw this in 2008. We are now hitting all-time highs, and we are definitely going to see a complete collapse of the stock market, and everything will start to come tumbling down. And we see these cracks starting to happen in companies. I mean, the earnings are coming in from companies. IBM, Intel, eBay all missed top-line estimates, and we're starting to see all of this. And you have to remember, the Fed is the market. It is the stock market. The Fed is giving this money to the banks, buying up their toxic real estate. The banks are taking this money and putting it back into the stock market to pump it up. And they want everyone in on the stock market. And this is what all this tapering and all this talk of the economy and all this other stuff is going on. Ben Bernanke, a couple weeks ago, he said he dares people to get into the stock market. They dared people in 2008. They wanted everyone in. Americans lost 38% of their wealth. This time, it is going to be worse. Now, Bernanke talked about tapering, and he went on to say the pace of bond purchases not on a preset course. So he's not saying when he's going to do it. It all depends on the economy. It all depends on the jobs. It all depends on the weather. That's pretty much what they always say. And says Fed may taper QE in 2013, halted around mid-2014. FOMC believes risk to economy eased since fall. Highly accommodative policy in foreseeable future. And he admits that the unemployment rate drop is due simply to the crash in the labor participation force. Shocking. Really? It's amazing. If a substantial part of the reduction in measured unemployment were judged to reflect cyclical declines in labor force participation rather than gains in employment, the committee would be unlikely to view a decline in unemployment to 6.5% as a sufficient reason to raise its target for the federal funds rate. Hey, I have an idea. Why don't we go back to the calculation the way it was done previous to 2008, and let's see what the real unemployment is. And let me just tell you, he'll never hit 6.5%. And he goes on to say, with unemployment still high and declining only gradually, and with inflation running below the committee's longer-run objective, a highly accommodative monetary policy will remain appropriate for the foreseeable future. And I mean, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, they're still talking about the tapering coming this fall. And you have to remember, I mean, we are all reading this and we're understanding that the Fed lies, because if we look back and right before the crash of 2008, the Fed told us there was no housing bubble. The Fed told us they're not predicting a recession anytime in the future. And the subprime mortgage backed securities are contained, and we know that whatever they say, it's always the opposite. And every time Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan come out and they tell us they're going to do something, you have to remember this is all for the people who are sleeping, that don't know what's going on. Everything sounds great, and you have to remember when people hear this and they hear that, oh, the Fed is going to stop because the economy is getting better and we don't have to do this anymore and it looks all good, everyone out there thinks everything is okay. Now, if everything is okay, oh, good. Maybe I'll put some money into the stock market because it keeps on. Look at it. I've been watching it for the last 2 years, and look how high it is. They're telling us it's okay. I'll put more money into the stock market. You know what? I know a couple people who think that the real estate is doing fantastically. They are looking at it and they're saying, "Wow, we need to sell our house and buy a bigger, more expensive house," because they believe what they're saying. And this is what happened in 2008. Now, right now, if we look back in 2008, we saw mortgage applications dropping off, but sales were still strong because there's a little bit of a lag time. And we can see that. Other people who are not paying attention do not see this. So something is going to happen this fall. This is why they want everyone in at this time, because they are going to bring this down, or they know of something that will bring this down. Could be the Treasury bond market, could be interest rates going up, could be Japan. It could be many, many factors that this will be tumbling down. It's almost like when Goldman came out and told everyone they're bearish on gold, and the next day or so, gold was smacked down $200+. Now, we could have all sold our physical gold, but since we know what's going on and we see physical gold is getting harder and harder to find, we realized that the physical market is really not affected by this, and that what they're trying to do is smack down the gold so they can acquire gold and get rid of their paper crap. Now, those people who are sleeping said, "Oh, gold is in a bubble. We better sell," and they probably sold at the lowest, amount, and they all got out. And they've been trying, the central banks and the Fed and the government, and they've been trying to push everyone out of gold because that's what they want. They want the gold. So we see this, and something is coming. Something is going to happen in the fall because it's always the opposite. They're telling everyone everything is okay. It is always the opposite. And Ben went on to say, and I think these are very funny quotes, Wall Street hasn't benefited more than Main Street? Really? And says Fed very focused on Main Street. Anyone out there see that? That they're really focused on the people? Yeah, I see it. And there was a question asked to Ben, are you printing money? And he said, not literally. I mean, it's just... And there was a follow-up question to that. If the Fed were to tighten policy, the economy would tank? And this is just unbelievable I mean, if you really listen to what is said and what is saying, he doesn't care about Main Street. He doesn't care about the people because the Fed is not part of the government. It's not part of the people. It's a separate corporation that is there to make money, to get hard assets, to get real estate, to get gold, to get oil, to get natural gas, to get land. That's what corporations do. Okay. Now, I also find that there was another article, and this was in Bloomberg, and I thought it was very interesting that Obama's confused Syria policy. Now, even the mainstream media is starting to pick up, and most of these reporters have no idea what's going on. And I hate to say it, but what is going on in Syria and Iran, it's starting to become ridiculous because, all these red lines, all these weapons of mass destruction, all these chemical chemical weapons on the Syrian people, not proved. The UN comes in and says, no, it was the rebels, and the U.S., argued, and they had France and England back them up, and then the UN came back with another report saying, oh, no, it was both sides. So it's starting to get confusing. Things aren't making sense. The rebels are fighting amongst themselves, and the Obama administration is getting into their backs are against the wall. They don't know how to maneuver themselves out of this situation. And this goes on to say, by now it's clear that the U.S. New policy towards Syria, we use the word new advisedly, remains unclear. And, it goes on to say that all options in Syria are terrible. Training the Free Syrian Army has a smaller chance of success today than when Obama's security officials proposed the policy last year, and has become less appealing. And if the U.S. strategy in Syria is to avoid getting involved, however, then Obama should say so. He should explain why the U.S. doesn't have enough at stake in Syria to intervene. What outcomes he is willing to accept, and why Iran is an entirely different case in which the red line really is red. And we have to look at this. It makes no sense why we are backing Syria. If you look at it from an outside perspective, why are we in Syria? Well, we know why, but the everyday American has no clue. We are there, and it's very hard for them to make this case because they're trying everything, and everything is backfiring, not making sense, falling apart, and we are there to get Syria back on the reserve currency, get Syria and put a Western central bank into the country, remove Assad, and place a puppet regime in there so the reserve currency can be used in Syria, and we have a direct path to Iran. But they've tried everything, and it's becoming confusing to the regular people, no, I shouldn't say regular, the sleeping people of America, and they don't even understand. They have no clue. Like, why are we there? And now they need to push this. And this is the problem. The problem is that they're running out of options. They are running out of strategies, and they're going to be left with one. And that strategy is to create some type of event that will help bring the U.S. into Syria, because nothing else is working. And this is what everyone should be worried about. Because now, to wake people up, you just can't. I mean, even the Boston bombing, that false flag, really didn't. No one cared. No one. They tried. The mainstream media put it out there over and over and over, and no one cared. They are going to have to push this and push it hard. They are going to have to make this horrific, bloody. It has to shock people and make them say, what the hell just happened? It has to be so bloody, so deathly, so scary that we need to go into Iran and Syria. And this is going to be their last-ditch effort until the main event, which is the cyber attack. They had to do this for Iraq. They had to do this, and they are going to need to do this with Syria. Now, episodes back, I think it was all the way back in episode 74, I talked about how we know that the economic collapse is getting closer. And one of the ways we know is, and we can see, is when governments start to tax the people more and more and more, and they try to find money, and they try to use all different methods of trying to find more money, then taxing them on that money. And I put up 7 points, and let me just read them quickly, and then you'll see where I'm going with this. Number 1, quickly creating laws to remove rights. 2, more taxes on the people. 3, more troops on the ground. 4, more military exercises within our borders. 5, when we see bail-ins. 6, more false flags to pass gun control laws, CISPA law, martial law, and war. And 7, war. And this is how we know. So we're seeing, again, and a lot of these we've been seeing a lot of lately, but here we are with more taxes. The U.S. Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act seeks to co-opt foreign banks as long-arm enforcement agencies of the IRS. And I will read to you what this legislation is looking to do. Okay, so to appreciate its breathtaking scope along with America's unique citizens-based tax practices, imagine this. You were born in California, moved to New York for education or work, fell in love, married, and had children. Even though you faithfully pay taxes in New York and haven't lived in California for 25 years, suppose California law required that you also file your taxes there because you were born there. Though you may never have held a bank account in California, you must report all of your financial holdings to the state of California. Are you a signatory on your spouse's account? Then you must declare his bank accounts too. Your children, now adults, have never been west of the Mississippi, but they too must file their taxes in both California and New York and report any bank accounts they or their spouses may have because they are considered Californians by virtue of one parent's birthplace. And this is not just within the United States. Foreign financial institutions trying to avoid these new requirements have 2 alternatives: to drop American clients or don't invest in the U.S., and neither of these benefit America. And I have this on this page. You can read the rest of this. But what are they doing? They are looking for your money to tax you on any way they can. That's what they're looking to do. Just like Obamacare, there's a penalty and a tax if you don't take it, because their goal is to keep taxing the people. You know, you think back, where did we see this before? Oh yeah, the revolution. Now, talking about more rights being taken away, Eric Holder slams stand your ground laws, claims self-defense may sow dangerous conflict. And he looks and he is saying that we need to get rid of these self-defense laws, that we really don't need them. And here's some of the quotes that he said. By allowing and perhaps encouraging violent situations to escalate in public, such laws undermine public safety. And it's funny that they always bring it back to, we're just trying to keep everyone safe. And you know what? You don't really need to defend yourself. You don't really need to have a gun. You really don't need to fight. You know what? If somebody comes up to you, just run or kick them, or actually just run. It what they're trying to do, and you see this, they are trying to remove all our rights, which they're doing a very good job of, which actually rights can't be removed, but they think they're removing them. And for those people who are not aware, they think that their rights are removed. But again, if the U.S. government is in control and you have 100 law enforcement surrounding your home, it's very difficult to not, you can either fight your way out of it or comply with what they're trying to do, unless the people decide to make a move in mass. These laws are in effect, and just because something is law doesn't mean it's right. And we are seeing many more of these laws. Now, it looks like the NDAA is now back in effect, and the U.S. Appeals Court throws out permanent injunction that had limited U.S. Government's use of indefinite military detention, and it looks like the appellate court threw out whatever any other judge said, and now NDAA is in full force. And what this means is you have no due process. They can pick you up for any reason, and they can say that we think that you're some type of terrorist. They don't have to have proof. You don't get due process. You don't get a lawyer. You get nothing. You know what you get? You get picked up and thrown into jail. That's what this does. So as you can see, they are removing our rights one by one with these laws, which are really null and void according to the Constitution, null and void according to Mulberry versus Madison, which is a Supreme Court case that says any law that's repugnant to the Constitution of the United States is null and void. But they don't care about that. Now, I talked a lot about CISPA, and I talk a lot about cyber attacks, and you have to remember, CISPA is still pending in the Senate, and CISPA was going to give companies the authority to give all data of people to the government, and the corporations wouldn't be held liable for any of this. And CISPA also gives the government pretty much control over all internet data. And before the whole Ed Snowden thing came out with the NSA spying, they are trying to pass this law to make it legal, because if it's law, then it's okay. And this is what they're trying to do. But Ed Snowden spilled the beans beforehand, but CISPA is still pending, and they still might try some type of an event to pass CISPA so they can turn around and say, well, it's law now, so it really doesn't matter, and all the spying is legal. But it really isn't, because then we go back to the Constitution, that nothing is above the Constitution, plus the Supreme Court case of Mulberry versus Madison that says any law that's repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. Now, we see the surveillance state moving forward. I mean, we see license plate trackers. We see the NSA with spying on the internet, spying phone calls, spying everywhere, and now for every transaction they want to create a like Google Earth so they can track your financial movements and put it on some type of map so they know wherever you are, wherever you're going, whatever transaction you're doing. We are turning into a complete surveillance state that you will not be able to walk outside of your house without someone knowing what you're doing. It's almost like having a government official walking behind you all day long, sitting in your car, going to work, getting out, walking with you into work. You decide to have a beer, they're coming with you. You decide to go gambling, they're coming with you. You decide to go, see someone that you shouldn't be seeing, they're with you. They're always with you. And this goes on to say that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is looking to create a Google Earth of every financial transaction of every American. Senator Mike Enzi warned today in a Senate speech opposing confirmation of Richard Cordray as CFPB director. This bill was supposed to be about regulating Wall Street. Instead, it's creating a Google Earth on every financial transaction. That's right, the government will be able to see every detail of your finances. Your permission, not needed, said Senator Enzi. Now, there was an article in that said cyber attacks on stock exchange put markets at risk. And this goes on to say that there could be a systemic impact from cyber attacks in the securities market, especially considering that our financial system is relying more and more on technological infrastructure. Among the exchanges surveyed, 53% said they experienced a cyber attack last year. And what they're doing is they're building the case, letting everyone know that cyber attacks are really bad. It's a virtual 9/11. It's a virtual nuclear war. It's a virtual attack on the United States and a declaration of war. And when this main event hits, and I've said this before, but let me just repeat it for those people who are new. If all else fails, what they will do is they will have this main cyber attack, and it will come. They'll say it's coming from China, Russia, Iran, Syria, North Korea, whatever country they want it to come from at that time, and it will hit the infrastructure and black out the United States. And that's what I believe 2003 was. It was some type of test to see if they can bring down the power grid, which they did a very successful job at. And they will bring down the infrastructure and put Americans into darkness. This will not last 1, 2, or 3 days. This will last weeks. Hagel has reported on this, and Janet Napolitano of DHS reported on this, of how the power grid water systems will be knocked out. They even showed a video on CNN of the generator shaking and exploding and then smoking up, and it will bring everything down for 2, 3, 4 weeks. People will be put into darkness. It might not happen in the entire country at once. It might happen in different sections. And what will happen is people will not be able to get food. They will make runs on the supermarket. They will not have batteries. They will not have generators. They will not have weapons. So after a couple days, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, people start getting worried. They need to feed their families, and they will start roaming about and breaking into other homes to find supplies. DHS and all these organizations that are put into place to protect us, well, no, they're not to protect us. They won't be around. There'll be no law around because they'll be with their families. And this will be a very difficult time. In the meanwhile, while this is happening, at the same time, money will be siphoned off from the banks. Martial law will be declared, and this will come down from the president, and he will let everyone know that they need to start confiscating guns, if they haven't already done this, to keep people safe. And after all this, when people die, people are sick, people are fed up, people are scared, people can't take it anymore, the lights will finally turn on in different sections, one by one, and the news will come out that one of these countries hit us, stole the people's money, and brought us into this economic collapse, and it's their fault. The people will say, well, we need to get this is ridiculous, we need to go fight them. and war will begin. This is the main event. Talking about false flags, we do have the Quantum Dawn 2 drill tomorrow. Starts at 9 o'clock, so we'll have to keep an eye on that and see what happens. This is a potential false flag. Doesn't mean something will happen, but normally when there's some type of drill, something does happen. Everything might go smooth tomorrow, but it's just a heads up. It's been a heads up for quite a while for people to take their money out and, just to be aware of what is going on. Okay. Now, there was an article that says 9 economic freedoms Americans have lost since our Declaration of Independence. And I'll just read them. Income tax. An American works hard 40 hours during the week and cannot fully enjoy what he earned. Sound money. The U.S. dollar has lost 90% of its value since the inception of the Federal Reserve System. National debt. Even if an American is completely debt-free, no credit card, no debt loans, student loans, remortgages, they are still indebted to the government because the Republicans and Democrats were reckless enough to force every taxpayer to be on the hook for $188,000. Property rights. For some reason, Americans don't hold property rights to a high standard. And number 5, labor. Over the past century, labor laws have been increasingly ridiculous. For instance, in some states, a person may have to belong to a union in order to work for a company. 6, business. The freedom to establish and operate a business has changed quite drastically. A study by the Heritage Foundation placed the U.S. in the 10th place in the world when it comes to business. Number 7, investments. Not only are your investments heavily taxed, they are meticulously regulated by the lawmakers in Washington. 8, trade, quotas, tariffs, taxes, and controls. For decades, the U.S. has embarked on a journey to hurt free trade more than to help it. Number 9, personal choice. The issue has been prevalent ever since New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg imposed new rules that would prohibit New Yorkers from buying a 20-ounce soda. And you can see that our rights and everything that we knew are starting to be chipped away, and we are approaching quickly a time when we don't have that many rights left. And that's why they are going after the gun, the weapons of the people, because this is one of the major rights and one of the major things that they're going after right now. And one of the last things they have left to do. But let me go back to why I believe that the crash will be happening this fall, and I call this part 1, and I've said this in previous episodes. I believe they want the government, the Fed, they want everyone in, and they're trying everything they can to get everyone into the stock market, into housing, into places where people really shouldn't be at this point in time. And what they're going to do, just like in 2008, some type of event, black swan, whatever you want to call it, is going to happen in the fall. Now, this won't be the major crash. This will be part 1. The Dow will drop dramatically. But I do not believe that this is going to be the end. It's going to drop. The government, the Fed, and the major players will make out like bandits. People will lose their wealth. People will lose just like they did in 2008. The Fed, in turn, will say we cannot stop tapering. We're going to have to increase the purchasing power of the Fed and print even more. I shouldn't say purchasing power, that we have to print more money than we're doing right now. Instead of $85 billion, we need to jack this baby up to $150 billion. And the markets will start to rise again because most of the banks are insolvent and they will be hurting. This is when I believe the bail-ins will start. This is what I believe we will see many different things start to happen. They will pump the market up once again. Not to the same highs, but pretty high. And come 2014 in the spring or so, the major collapse will occur, and many people will be completely wiped out, and everything will start to crumble around us. And this is what I think is going to happen. And the timing might be off a little bit. When they say the fall, it could be October, November. I mean, in the spring, it could be any time. There's no time frame, or it could be in the summer. But this is how I think this is going to play out, because what they're saying and what they're talking about, um, when I look back at 2008 and you look back at the Great Depression, and I look at that a lot, and I look at the news, I look at what the Fed says, I look at what government officials say, and it seems like we're all playing into this right now. And most of our rights have been taken away, and they are just pushing more taxes on us, and we're coming to a point where we will see something major happen. Listen, everyone, thank you for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.